KoshienCast, where you can learn how bikes will always take you to your destination. My name is Matt, and joining me today is a very special guest, Matt.
That is my first name.
Yes, it is. Excellent. Well, thank you for joining me here today, Matt. Always appreciate your company.
Thanks. I'm here, still.
Good. I'm glad. Well, Matt, do we have any announcements for this week?
I don't think we have anything in particular other than what week it is.
Right, it is week 12 of the spring season, so we're covering all sports anime that have aired from June 18th to June 24th.
You know, we do have one other announcement.
Oh, what's that?
It's that we're really good at having smooth intros, where we don't speak in stilted manner and read off a document in a disorganized fashion. Like, I just want to make sure everyone knows that that's not the case.
Right. We really know what we're doing here, guys.
Yeah.
So, speaking of things we know how to do, why don't I talk about Yowamushi Pedal? Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Should we start over?
No, we're going to talk about Yowamushi Pedal now, episode 25. 24. Okay, Yowamushi Pedal, episode 24. Okay, so this episode, Teshima and Minami are riding, and that's really about it for the meat of the episode. We don't really get Onoda catching up to them. They're just sort of going back and forth for a little bit. And the end of the episode has Minami getting his chain caught, which allows Teshima to finally pass him, as he has been trying to do the entire episode.
Right.
I'm sorry that I don't have a more detailed summary. This episode really didn't have anything.
Yeah, there's not much to it. Like, 80 or 90% of it is just a back and forth between Teshima and Minami.
Right.
Yeah, they progress a lot. They get almost to the finish line of the mountain stage. You get a little more background on Teshima, I guess.
Did you? Like, we didn't really learn anything about him that we didn't already know. We learned that there was a girl who talked to him in his class, and then he would come home tired from riding his bike. That's about the extent of what we got. I guess the big thing that did happen this episode was that Teshima had his big speech that he gave to Minami about how much he loves to bike.
Yeah.
And he loves them because the bikes take them to his destination?
Yeah, exactly. Like, when you get on a bike, you'll always get where you're going, which is somehow different than other modes of transportation.
Like, to me, at the very least, this sounds like something that is trying to make a very deep and meaningful speech. Like, this is supposed to be Teshima's big moment in the series. And it's just using really flowery language to say absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
Because he's talking about, like, this grand journey he's had, where he met the red-haired Naruto, the giant Imaizumi, the bespectacled Onoda. It's like, who? It sounds like
they're your classmates. Who talks like that?
Yeah, exactly.
I can't imagine, when we were growing up, I'd be like, yes, and this weekend I'm going to hang out with my friend, the bespectacled Matt.
And I'm going to hang out with my friend, the bespectacled Matt.
Well, yeah, at that time I did have bespectacles.
But yeah, it's just like, this sounds like somebody who, this has been a common theme throughout Yowamushi Pedal. It feels like the author has read better stories, and he understands, like, the mechanics, or, like, he can emulate them. He knows where, because it's like, okay, so these big monologues have, like, big flowery words in them.
Mm-hmm.
Or big flowery descriptions. So he includes that in the speech, but it's like, this doesn't mean anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sorry we're kind of harping on this speech a while, because that's literally the only real meat of the episode, outside of the fact that Teshima manages to pass Minami because Minami makes a mistake by pushing his gears too much and kind of and getting tangled up.
Well, yeah, so effectively, Minami's ability is that even on an incline, he'll switch his gears up, so he'll increase the resistance on his gears so that he can push harder and go faster and just push through it. and that's what he calls his wings, that he increases resistance on a more difficult portion anyway. And he does that one too many times, I guess, and it causes his chain to slip. So he's not able to actually pedal. And that's when Teshima pushes ahead, but of course, it's the end of the episode. I mean, we have one episode left in this season,
right?
And they're not even done with the first day. They're just gonna get to the end of the mountain stage,
right? Because I'm guessing they want to end the season on Minami and Onoda racing. That's literally the only thing I can think of. Because Onoda's not there yet.
Yeah, and they have 400 yards. It's meters, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like they should be seeing Onoda about this point. And I guess, maybe it's my fault because I'm assuming that Onoda's going to make it. But, that's kind of the way the series has been, where it's kind of taking the most common tropes that you find in sports anime and just sort of throwing them out there. Without really a lot of, play on how we expect them. So that's kind of why I'm expecting Onoda to show up, because they wouldn't have made a big hullabaloo about him, breaking breaking the promise that he made to Teshima.
Yeah.
About not letting him go forward. It's he's gonna do it anyway. So, I don't know. There were a couple other things I wanted to talk about the episode, but was there anything you wanted to talk about in particular?
No, you can go ahead.
Okay. There were a couple of very odd lines that I noticed in the episode. For one, they make a big deal about when they pass Kawahara, who was Bunya's partner, apparently.
Right. Yeah.
And they talk about, they actually passed Kawahara, the favorite to win the mountain stage. Wait, who?
And these are the onlookers that are saying this, right?
Yeah, exactly. I guess they were just saying that he was the favorite because he pulled on ahead.
Yeah, he was in first at the time.
He was at first, so I guess maybe that's what they were going for, but at the same time, I don't understand why they would say he was the favorite to win. This happens all the time in, cycling. Somebody tries to pull out ahead right at the beginning, and, they kind of lose their endurance, and then people who better pace themselves are able to pull on ahead.
Mm-hmm.
So, I guess...
Wouldn't the favorite be one of the guys who got first or second last year?
Yeah, exactly. Wouldn't it have been Onoda or Minami? Which,
right.
Speaking of which, can we talk about Teshima's plan? So the whole thing was that Teshima was apparently able to predict. The reason why he was the one who pulled out in front was because he realized that if Imaizumi went out, then Hakone would have sent Ashikiba.
Mm-hmm.
If Naruko went out, they would have sent out Kuroda.
Right.
But no, because Teshima isn't useful, all they have to do is just send out Minami. Wait. Isn't Minami their ace rider? Their ace climber?
Well, I think what they're saying is that Minami was already going regardless. And what he meant was that if they sent anyone but Teshima, Hakone would have sent a second person to assist Minami to make sure that Minami won.
Okay, that makes more sense, I guess. Though I mean, it is just I guess they could have had somebody pull for Minami, I guess.
Yeah, they just would have had a 2-on-1, which inevitably would have made it easier for Minami to break away.
Okay, that makes more sense then. Sorry, because the way I had heard that was that they were trying to do they would have just sent out one-on-ones. It's and that Teshima was so bad that it's all they had to do was send out Minami.
No.
But
this was assuming Minami was going.
Okay, my bad then. I completely misread that.
Yeah, I mean, I got it, but I could see how it was really easy to misinterpret.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that's honestly all I really had to say
how about this one? I had two quotes that I wrote down. Okay. One, Minami is taunting Teshima early in the episode. He says, "You're not flashy, you're not strong." And Teshima effectively says, "Stop talking to me." Which is funny at the time. I'm like, that's great. Like, he's the ordinary man who's out of breath and he doesn't want to have a dialogue right now. But then, of course, the entire rest of the episode is them talking.
Right, just like talking for the entire rest
exactly,
of the episode.
He's like, stop talking to me, except for let's talk for 20 minutes. That and, like, Minami doing his little foreshadowing, saying, oh, Teshima, your writing has been stronger since you realized that Onoda isn't coming. It's so on the nose, like, hey, audience, guess what? Onoda can't possibly catch up. And everyone knows it. So I can't imagine what's going to happen next week.
Right. Yeah, no, you're not wrong. Also, like, the fact that he was literally pushing himself so hard that he was going to pass out in the middle of the race.
He actually, he fainted and then decided that fainting was lazy.
Right.
I don't know. It's a superhero show more than anything.
I mean, I guess if we can just bear with it in that context, I guess.
Yeah.
But
it's a superhero show, but it's not that interesting a superhero show, so...
Yeah, a little bit, so...
Speaking of superhero shows, do you want to discuss Tiger Mask?
Please.
Alright, so this is episode 37 of Tiger Mask, and it starts with the 5th match, where Okada is facing Miracle 1, everyone's favorite antagonist, Miracle 1. They end up both getting thrown out of the ring and injuring themselves when they get back in. Despite an injury, Okada is able to defeat Miracle 1, but because he's injured, he can't go back out, so Tiger Mask appoints himself to fight in the 6th match against Tiger the Great III. His mask has been torn open, so Haruna sews... She cuts the Tiger Mask and the Tiger the Dark Mask in half and sews them back together. So his face is half Tiger Mask and half Tiger the Dark. Everyone comments on how he is now has the power of both tigers, and they call him Tiger Mask Double, which is the name of the show. In the match itself, it goes back and forth. There's not much to describe, but it's actually some pretty awesome animation. By the end of things, Tiger Mask is able to defeat Tiger the Great III effectively by using a combination of Tiger the Dark's moves and his own moves, and using some new killer moves he's never used before. So NJPW wins, and then at the end of the episode, Naoto decides that he's going to go wrestle in Mexico, and Takuma is going to wrestle in America, and they're going to forge on becoming the best wrestlers they can.
Right. Yeah, so...
Yeah, doesn't that sound like the final episode of the series?
Right, yeah, it really does, but it's not.
Yeah, it's not.
But we'll maybe talk about that a little bit later. So, I just wanted to say real quick, if Tiger Mask had been like this the entire series, I would have said that this would have been a fun watch.
Well, yeah, I mean, the animation itself was a huge step up. This was probably the best fight animation in the series, and deservedly so, because, it's sort of the ultimate match.
Right. It's finally Tiger versus Tiger. We finally have Tiger Mask kind of going up against his longtime rival. Finally, this was the episode, I guess, that they were saving the animation budget for. Makes sense.
Clearly, yeah.
The other reason I thought this episode would have been if the series had been more like this, is kind of the random goofy campiness of it. Because of the fact... So they make a big deal about the fact that Tiger Mask walks out with a new mask, with the sewn together, remnants of both masks.
Right.
And apparently this is supposed to mean that Tiger Mask and Tiger the Dark have fused into one, and so Naoto just now magically has all of Takuma's moves.
Right, which they explain away by saying, well, yeah, I mean, they trained together, so... Like, yeah, but that doesn't mean he could just do it in a match situation on command.
Right, why wasn't he doing that before then? Why weren't they doing that before?
Right.
And, like, it's like that sort of goofy, dumb explanation that you'd find in, like an old kid's cartoon. That's kind of what I want out of this series. Like, yeah, I mean, it's like the symbolism is just so on the nose.
Right.
Like, now, like, it's all come full circle, and they found that coming together is what they'll finally bring them victory. And it's like, this is kind of stupid, but also kind of awesome.
Yeah.
Then there was just a lot of really, like, not really, like, a lot of really random stuff, but, like, I love the fact that Naito finally shows up at the very end to tell Okada to let Tiger Mask wrestle for him.
Yeah, I'm not sure what function that served, except as a promotion material, because, Naito's a real wrestler, and so they needed these real wrestlers to talk about how great Tiger Mask... I don't know.
Yeah, no, I don't know. I just thought it was really funny that Naito heroically arrives at the very end just to tell him, nah, man, let him wrestle for you. It's like, so was this going to be Naito's function then? Like, you flew all the way, like, back from Mexico, and I know your intent was to actually wrestle in these matches. But it's really funny to me that that's the function he ended up serving.
Yeah.
I did enjoy the scene at the airport as well, where both Haruna and, oh my goodness,
Rory?
Yeah, Rory are, like, running into the airport looking for both of their men, and then apparently Kevin has been there the entire time, also running around looking for Takuma. Because he just sort of like, the girls kind of run towards the camera, shouting, like, Naoto, Takuma, and then, he just sort of runs into the frame out of nowhere, and it's just like, Takuma! It's like, where did you come from? Have you been here?
Yeah. Yeah, and it was funny. It was just a little, like, of course they, like, Naoto and Takuma are too good at wrestling and too obsessed with wrestling to acknowledge the possibility of love. You know, like, they don't even say goodbye to their theoretical romantic partners. They just, like, have a manly handshake in the airport and talk about, like, like, see you in the ring.
How convenient that both of them as well, like, have, like, flights to... Well, I mean, I guess they're both going, in the general direction.
Yeah, they're both going to North America.
Yeah, they're both going... Because I thought it was funny that they both apparently have flights at around roughly the same time at the same airport. Now, admittedly, if they're in Tokyo, then, I mean, the Tokyo airport is huge, so... Yeah. But, there were a couple of very odd things about this episode. Like, I thought it was strange that we never did find out the identity of Tiger the Great III. I know he's supposed to be the successor to Tiger the Great.
Yeah, but it's not like we saw his face or anything.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, was there any more to that story there? I guess not.
Yeah, also, I don't totally understand the explanation that, like, well, now GWM isn't a thing. It's like... Wait, what? Like, what? Why were they contractually obligated to cease to exist? Did you really defeat Tiger's Den? Like, what?
That was kind of my thought too. It's like they're clearly going to exist over the world, like all around the world. Like, there's no reason that they can't come back. They're a gigantic business.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you didn't make it illegal to be in GWM. I don't know. I don't know. What are the ramifications of them losing a match in Japan?
Like, and I mean, it's not as if though this is the first time they've ever lost a match either. Like, I guess I just don't really quite again, it's, wrestling's meant for kids, this is, like, I guess it makes, like, kid logic.
Right.
Like, well, yeah, they lost, so yeah, they they beat the bad guys, so they're going away now. But it's like, that doesn't actually make any logistical sense. Like, they're a giant business, like,
right.
Places all over the world.
I mean, and that's the thing, is that Tiger Mask tries to simultaneously have real world logic and wrestling narrative logic and treat them both like they're both legitimate, but it doesn't quite work.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of I think the central issue with the show. The other thing I thought, kind of along the same lines, that's also kind of weird to me, is that, did we ever find out who Miracle 1 was?
No.
like, which I wouldn't have really thought much of it, but the weird thing is we found out the identities of every single other one of the miracles.
Yeah.
And there was kind of like, there was kind of a reveal process to each of them, right? And I kind of thought there was going to be like some weird surprise twist with Miracle 1, and we just kind of didn't.
Yeah, just a whole lot of nothing.
Yeah, pretty much. So,
I mean, it was the same with Fukuwara Mask. We got one more little sliver of information that, he refers to Kentaro, who's Naoto's trainer, and Haruna's uncle. He hangs out with him and goes to Tiger Mask's training facility, and he accidentally refers to him as senpai, and he's like, what? And like, oh, well, because you're older than me, or whatever. So clearly Fukuwara Mask had some kind of relationship with him.
Right. Because we know that, oh my goodness, why can't I think of his name? But we know Takaoka, we know he was the original
Yellow Devil, yeah.
Yeah, he was the original Yellow Devil. So I'm guessing in the original show, Yellow Devil must have had, like, an assistant of some kind.
Yeah.
And maybe that's what it's trying to make a callback to, is like, oh, Fukuwara Mask was actually his assistant, so we finally have his identity, I guess. That's the only thing I could think of.
Yeah, you're right. I'm sure. Still, it's not very satisfying for someone who didn't watch this show from decades ago,
Right. And so then, along those lines as well, other things that basically didn't happen was, so what was the deal with Fukuwara Mask and Miss X assistant?
Yeah, Lady. Yeah, who's that?
Yeah, Lady. Yeah, it's like, I guess we do technically have one more episode to wrap these things up, but this felt like such a final episode.
Yeah, exactly. So the preview for the next episode makes it appear like Miss X and Haruna are going to team up to promote the Spring Tiger as a wrestler. And we're going to see some candy pair action. And it really it feels like an OVA, like, something like a bonus episode you'd get on the Blu-ray or something.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great way to put it. I was trying to think of, like, how I would describe this, but yeah, no, that's definitely what it feels like.
Yeah, and that's so, like, talk about going out on a low note,
Yeah, a little bit. So I think your theory was that they're probably going to end up, like, they're going to try and do, like, a tease for, like, a new season.
Yeah. I mean, that's the only way I can justify it, because it doesn't make sense narratively, is that, at the end of next week's episode, they're going to have an announcement that, like, coming in 2018, Spring Tiger W, or something awful like that, where Harun is the main character and she's going to have to become the best female wrestler in Japan. And we'll have to watch it.
At the very least, that's more interesting.
Well, Harun is a more interesting character than Naoto, so I'll give her that. But
yeah.
Anyway, so we'll see. I'm not going to theorize too deeply because we'll see in a few days. But
yeah, pretty much. Cool. So, something we are interested in, though, is a big wind-up. So, Matt, would you like to take over?
Yes, Matt, I would like to take over. So smooth, so authentic.
I'm really good at this.
Yeah. All right. So this big wind-up episode 12. It starts off with a flashback where Mahashi's thinking about his time growing up in Creeker Villa with his friend Hamada. And Hamada shows up for practice because they want him to get to know the team as the leader of the cheer squad. They talk about meditation, about learning how to relax in game, and then there's an extended montage over their training on how they're going to prepare for their game against Tosei. And then it concludes with the world's most important line, Tajima saying, "If we practice real hard, Coach gives us candy." Which was really one of my favorite lines. But yeah, so this was more or less a training focused episode, but it was also a little bit more about the character of like how you get this team of freshmen into the mental space where they can succeed against opponents that are quantitatively better than them.
Right. Because, it's interesting because, like, a lot of shows play with the idea of how your mentality affects the game, but they always it's always kind of more of, like, it's sort of an aside. Almost.
Yeah, and I feel like those discussions often come up with secondary characters.
Right.
They come up with the guy who's just borderline and not quite good enough, and he's worried, but he has to learn to, like, believe in himself or whatever. But the main character, they always are totally confident and totally comfortable. And, well, not always, because there are shows that do that, but often that's how it comes up. But this one is, like, literally all of you need to learn these skills. They're not innate.
Right, exactly. It's like, it's like, it's important for you to learn how to keep calm in these situations. Like, yes, we know that we're going up against last year's champions, but we still need to learn. So it's like, in order to counteract that, we need to learn to deal with some of our intimidation we might have. It's probably good that we're doing this now.
Right.
And I appreciate the fact that they do treat it more as a mental state more than anything. Like, I thought that even, like, it kind of adds another sense of realism to it. Because, it can happen. You can have, like, the teams that have been, like we never find out more about the teams that are who end up having to play last year's champions and are kind of seen as another, like, stone in the road for their like, path to glory, or at the very least their path to, like, better players.
Right. Yeah, they're always sort of quickly taken care of in a half an episode or less.
Right. They're kind of there to be more about, like, setting up that team than anything. So it's nice to see that. I did think it was kind of neat, too. I kind of like the fact that Hamada is, he has to attend the practices as well, because, like, even Coach Momoe even mentions that, like, you know what, you serve a very important function to this team as well. You got to keep, it's like, you can't let, it's like, keeping the crowd energized is great, good or bad, but what you can't let them see is negativity. Or not even, but disappointment is really more what she was talking about. She can't, it's like, the parents are going to be there, and they're going to be affecting these children's mental states. Like, you need to be there to make sure, like, that is your role. Your role is to keep, like, the positive energy going. And it's like, okay, like, this actually is the most accurate representation of cheerleaders I think I've ever seen.
Yeah, exactly. Like, what, because it shows up, they show up in other shows, but they're treated as a fact. They're just sort of, like, part of the landscape, but they don't necessarily show what kind of an active role they have.
Right.
I really enjoyed her speech about how if you're a kid and your parents are there, they're going to be capable of encouraging you more than anyone, but they're also going to be capable of discouraging you more than anyone based on their demeanor.
Right.
And that was something I've honestly never thought about. Partly because I didn't do high school athletics,
Right.
but partly just because, you don't think of the parents even existing in these shows a lot of times. Right. How many sports anime do you actually see these kids' parents? They kind of
they're
don't
kind of, like,
exist.
off to the side. Like,
Yeah.
that they're probably attending the games, but, it's like the kids, they're more focused on the game. It does, like, the crowd kind of doesn't matter. I think the first time you've ever seen, like, the crowd ever even do much in these shows was in Haikyuu.
Right, but that was just their peers. There was no impact, like, there was never any allusion to their parents being part of it.
Right, and, it's kind of interesting to think about. It's like, yeah, you know what? These kids will be affected by the presence of, like, the people that they care about.
Yeah, of course.
So,
I thought that was great.
One final thing I just wanted to note real quick as well was I did kind of like how they sort of dropped that what they're doing a lot of times in practice isn't even all the time playing baseball, but they are still playing games with one another, like freeze tag and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of liked the fact that Hamada seemed to have at least the insight to note that, like, yeah, you know what, like, that's how you keep these kids playing, like, practicing for so long, like...
Right, it's fun. That's
right. They're actually having fun at these practices, and it's not because they're, like, so determined to they're not so motivated, like, just to, like, practice. They are, but there is kind of this acknowledgement that, yeah, people have these mental barriers in them. People get tired if they're not still having fun. You can practice for so long But sometimes it's not about just having the mental fortitude to just keep working through it. You know, you gotta spice it up a little bit.
Yeah. And the one thing I like is, you know, training montages can be pretty dull. I think a good training montage is one that still teaches you something new about the characters. It doesn't just reinforce stuff.
Right.
And my favorite part of the training montage was they had one portion where they were doing batting practice with the pitching machine, and Tajima goes up and he's effectively calling his shots. So before the pitch comes, he's calling where he's going to hit it, and then he hits it there. So he's saying like, oh, down the third base line, and he hits down the third base line. It's like short left, and then he hits it short left, you know. And so he's practicing situational hitting so he can direct his shots. And then after him comes Hanai, who he wants to do the same thing, and so he calls his shots, and he calls center field, and he hits it to center field, and he says, again to center field. And then he says, returning to center field. And you realize that, oh, he can't actually control his hitting that well. He's just strong, and he can hit it consistently to center field, but that's it. But he still wants to look like act like he's just as good as Tajima, and he wants to show off, so he calls all his shots, but it's just the same shot over and over.
Right. And, you know, that was established during the game, during their practice game. You know, Hanai does have this little bit of a complex with Tajima. It's not really, like, thrown in your face, but, you know, it's another aspect to his character.
Yeah, he wants to be looked at as being just as good or better than Tajima, so he tries to put himself in that situation, but he can't quite get there, so I loved that.
So, do you want to move on to something that we don't quite love, but kind of do? Encouragement of Climb. You want to talk about Encouragement of Climb?
Let's talk about Encouragement of Climb.
Okay, so we are covering episodes 15 and 16 of the series. The first episode is a surprise flashback to Kaede's past, where we learn she used to always hike by herself, and while she still did that, she did have a friend who was constantly concerned about her by the name of Yuka, and what Kaede learns towards the end of the episode is that, Yuka may have been getting on my case a lot because, you know, I was going by myself, but, you know, she was concerned about me, and I needed to be more respectful of that. I'm also glad that we are still friends, and I hope I can be like that to these other girls as well, like Yuka was to me. And then the second episode was about... It was kind of running in tandem with that episode, but not quite. It's about Aoi being concerned about their trip to Mount Tanagawa because she's afraid of the ropeways there, which are basically like the gondolas that take you up the mountain.
Right.
And so Kaede essentially tells her, yeah, it's scary at first, but you get used to it.
Right.
And they go out shopping for a little bit, or they were about to go shopping, but Kaede, because Aoi needs a raincoat, but Kaede gives her raincoat that she had that Yuka got for her.
Right.
And that's kind of the episode. Not a lot going on, but some okay things in there. Yeah,
so the one thing that I really wanted to focus on was from episode 15 with the introduction of Yuka. And so what was interesting here... Well, I don't know if it's interesting good or interesting bad, so I'll let you tell me. But she goes through this whole episode with her... You know, she's looking at her old raincoat, and she's like, oh yeah, that's the raincoat I got with Yuka back then. And then she has all these flashbacks of, like, the great time she used to have with Yuka, and you can see that she has these pictures in her room that are of her and Yuka together, and a couple times, she makes these sort of, she muses, and she's like, oh, I wonder what Yuka's doing now. And then at the end of the episode, she texts her and says, hey, want to hang out? And she comes over and they hang. Like, the whole episode was setting up some kind of drama, like, oh, you know, she left or she moved away or she died or something. I thought there was going to be some depth there. Like, why would you hold this raincoat in your hands like, oh, yeah, this was what I got with Yuka that one day, and have it just be your friend who you're still going to school with and you hang out with a lot.
Were they still going to school? Was she still going to school with her? Did they mention that? Or because I didn't get the sense that they were going to the same school, but I do know what you're talking about, because I did actually have the same thought. I thought that there was going to be some sort of weird twist where, like, Yuka had died.
Yeah, like on a climb or something, and it would be very tragic, but no.
But no, they're still
Yuka
cool.
never even went on a climb. She just, like, was her friend, and one time told her that a blue raincoat would be cute. Like,
yeah.
Is that really that instructive of, like, Yuka was always there for me? Well, I mean, like, not in person, but emotionally, and sometimes.
The sense I kind of got from it was, like, okay, for example, you know, with all due, you know, you're really into baseball?
Oh, me?
Yeah, you.
Okay, yes.
You. And, you know, I'm not so much. But,
That's
you know,
true.
you still text me a lot of times about, like, different things that happen in sports games. And I'm like, yeah, cool, man. Like, that's neat. Like,
Well,
stuff like
only when it's exceptionally cool.
Right, no, I understand. I'm just saying. That was the same sort of sense I got between Kaede and Yuka, was that Kaede was really, you know, she is good friends with this one girl, but, you know, she has a hobby that's separate from this one friend.
Right.
But, you know, there's that one moment where you kind of feel like, you know, your hobbies may intersect, you know, like Yuka likes to go out shopping for clothes, like looking at that sort of thing. She's like, well, if you like to climb, here, how about this raincoat?
Yeah.
Like, you might need this, and I think this would look nice on you. And I kind of got the sense, like, Kaede, that's sort of almost a symbol for Kaede, just because, like, you know, my closest friend and I, like, this is my main hobby, but she's not really into it, but this was the one time she tried to, like, reach out to me.
Yeah, I guess it was just the tone that seemed so, like, wistful and nostalgic. Like, why would they do all that setup just for her to be someone that they still hang out with?
Like, I think it could have worked if they had treated it a bit more, like, if it had a bit more self-awareness to, like, what it was doing, and just had kind of this sunny turnaround.
Right.
And I think that's something of a problem with the tone of Encouragement of Climb, because it's such a gentle series that it really can't go in one extreme emotion or another very well.
Mm-hmm.
So because it's a very subdued, so they can't really have, like, an overbearing, like tragic episode and then kind of bring around and, like, make it almost goofy, just because it doesn't fit with the setting that they're going for here. So I kind of got the sense that may have been a bit of an intentional joke, but
yeah, but they couldn't actually pull it off because it would be too out of character.
Yeah, exactly.
Huh. Maybe that's a pretty generous reading, but all right.
Can we also talk about, like, this is such a minor thing. Can we talk about her weird shifting, like, frame that Kaede has, like
her body?
No,
Wait,
like the picture frame. The picture frame she has on her desk that's constantly changing pictures.
Okay.
This is I really hope I'm not going to be embarrassing myself here. Is that a thing? I have never seen that. Okay, I have never seen that before, at least around here. I assumed it was something that you just stick your you stick, like, an SD card in with some pictures, and it would just keep cycling through them for you.
Yeah,
but it's
that's pretty much it. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I was so taken aback by this, and I didn't. If you didn't know what was gonna what that was, I was going to have a bit more of an extreme reaction there. But now that I know that's actually a thing, I'm just gonna let that go.
Yeah, super normal. You can get it at Target.
Okay, did not know that.
That's okay.
Okay, so now that I've wasted our time with that, let's talk about the second episode there.
Okay.
I guess I didn't... the major meat of that episode was the fact that Kaede gave Aoi her coat.
Mm-hmm.
This is going to sound silly. I actually did not see that coming. Like,
yeah, I kind of didn't either.
Well, because I didn't really expect that to come back. It's like, were they setting up that last episode just so that they could have Kaede give that to her Aoi this episode? Like, that's weirdly interesting, but maybe not really. Because it's like, it's, I guess, a bit of a subtle passing of the torch, almost? Or it's kind of more of like a, see, look, this is nice of what you can do with climbing. You can kind of share things with your friends.
Right, but also, you know, it doesn't directly make sense, because Yuka didn't get it before Kaede. She just helped her pick it out, and she never climbed with her. So, like, the relationship is totally different. So it's not like, oh, Yuko once gave this to me, so I'll pass it on to you. Like, that's, there's no parallel there.
I guess that's fair. I guess, yeah, I don't really have a lot more to say about that. I just thought it was interesting.
Yeah,
but,
it was okay as far as setups go, but it didn't exactly.
Right, I mean, I guess it's just kind of weird that they spent that. On one hand, I thought it was interesting that entire first episode was basically a stealth setting up of this coat. At the same time, it's not really that important of a thing, so I'm not entirely sure why that was a stealth build-up.
So this is the last thing and then we can wrap up. But
Okay.
So on episode 16, I wrote down. I don't remember what the context was for this, but I wrote down the quote "Kokona:" and then the quote is, "You look like you belong in the Highlands." Which I remember thinking was funny, but I don't remember who she was talking to or why. She was talking to Kaede, right?
Right. So I guess what she's saying is because Kaede is dressed... Because when they meet up with Kaede, she's wearing, I guess, like, more fashionable clothes than what she normally wears. Because she generally just wears, like, tank top, shorts, whatever. I'm assuming, like, when she says, like, the Highlands, I'm guessing there's sort of, like, a class thing going on there where... I guess, like, the Highlands is where the rich live.
Oh, yeah, and then was that when they were talking about, like, Heidi? That she looked like...
Yeah, maybe.
Heidi of the Alps or
she
something?
could have been, because I know that was very popular in Japan.
Yeah.
So yeah, that may have been what she was referring to, but that was kind of an odd quote. But then again, Kokona's kind of an odd character, so...
That's true. Well, with that quality analysis past us, do you want to wrap it up for the week?
Yeah, cool. So... Thanks for joining me, Matt.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah, next week we'll actually have a couple episodes coming out because we'll be doing the preview for the summer season as well as wrapping up this current season. So look for 2 episodes coming out next week.
Yes, that is correct. And then shortly afterwards, we should be having some review episodes because we've had some series that have ended.
Yep. So we'll be reviewing Tiger Mask and Yowamushi Pedal after they end next week.
Fantastic. Cool. Well, if you wouldn't mind, Matt, would you please hit the credits?
Fine.
Our logo design is by James Ratcliffe. The theme music is Fly High by Burnout Syndromes, covered and performed by Luke Bartka. You can follow KoshienCast on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, and our email is kosiencast@gmail.com. Make sure to subscribe, rate, and review. We will be back next week with the best and worst from the world of sports anime, and until then, keep training.